Good afternoon, Zed Poswally at TrippScott. We're here for another installment of a TrippScott webcast. Today we have Doug Schoen, commentator at Fox News, Democratic campaign consultant, and is widely recognized as the co-inventor of the overnight polling. Interesting, Doug, what do you make of Tuesday's results, this past results with Chris Christie and the Terry McAuliffe race in Virginia?
It was obviously a split decision in terms of the Democrats winning Virginia, Chris Christie, the Republicans winning New Jersey. There's a but. The but is the Virginia race was much closer than people expected. There were a whole spate of local elections around the country where Republicans did very much better than people expected. I think there is a reaction against, even a revulsion towards Obamacare from a large number of people. Whether it will be evidenced in 2014 or not is not yet clear, but the tea leaves that I see suggest that there probably will be a reaction. And with 14 Democratic senators having an unscheduled, unannounced meeting with the president last week to say, Mr. President, you got to do something, that suggests they believe that too. I think the big winner for the Republicans on Tuesday was Chris Christie. Whether he can be the nominee or not is another question. The conservative wing of the party is already pushing back. But Ed, as we sit here today, it was probably a good day for the Republicans, a better day for Chris Christie, and it was probably not a good day for President Barack Obama.
Now, let's talk about Obamacare just for a little bit from a political implication standpoint. The website debacle is one thing. In Florida, 300,000 people have received cancellation notices of their individual health care. The legs on something like that politically that impacts somebody's either motivation to go and vote or ensures a vote in the opposite way.
Well, we saw in 2010 that there was a lot of motivation. I think we're going to see motivation similarly in 2014, unless the measure is implemented in the way that Medicare Part D was and it ends up working well. But, you know, I think with all the people, as you point out, being canceled, the number of people being dropped from coverage, the still problems with the website, and I don't think we have a clear sense for the people whose coverage, for whatever reason, is changing, whether it's going to be similar coverage or perhaps less good. The other issue, and again, you know, I think it's one that doesn't get that much discussion, but when you add pretty quickly 40 or 50 million people to the rolls or to insurance, and you don't increase substantially the number of doctors, it's got to put pressure on the system. So, Ed, I'm pessimistic.
And do you think some of it is also a crisis in character about the way the American people might view this administration at this point?
Well, I have watched the president, as I know you have, and I have not seen a willingness to compromise, a willingness to discuss, a willingness to try to engage in a dialogue to fix what is obviously imperfect legislation. And I think the apology the other night, or the non-apology as I call it, didn't give people a sense that this was a compassionate man.
As a PR expert in the field day to day, I mean, was that that apology achieve what it needed to?
I don't think so. His approval ratings, the president's, are down around 40%, and that says to me that people didn't engender a great deal of sympathy for him.
So the question ultimately would be that while the Democrats and the administration really hadn't had the best couple of weeks, and that might have some legs over Obamacare, can the Republicans pull it together and take advantage of it?
That's an open question, because I mean, the Republicans' greatest problem, their greatest enemy, is themselves. There's no positive message for the party. There's no agenda going forward. The party itself is deeply divided. And the Tea Party wing has consistently nominated people who in general elections have a tough time beating vulnerable Democrats.
And where do you think somebody, like you mentioned, Chris Christie had a great night the other night? Does he, is he the answer?
He could well be. I think Chris Christie is probably the front runner now for the nomination by dint of his success. But it's a more conservative party than Chris Christie. He said, look, I'm conservative in trying to make the case he's right-wing in a party where you have to be right-wing to be nominated. And to me, it's an open question whether he can succeed in making that case.
And then some folks like Ted Cruz or Rand Paul or even Jeb Bush, where do you think they fit in?
Well, Jeb Bush is a moderate. I see him different from Cruz and Rand Paul. I think there's enough votes in the Republican primary that one of them, Cruz or Paul, can be compelling. I'd say today, Cruz would be more likely to be compelling than Paul, if only because Paul's mired in this plagiarism scandal.
Then you think that's a true scandal that's going to...
Well, in politics, perception is everything. And if you borrow things and it was inadvertent, but it's consistent, and it happens over a few months and a few articles, it's problematic. And even if I'm overstating the case, which I don't think I am, it's hard to go to donors, people watching this video, for example, and say, give to a guy who's acknowledged he's made repeated mistakes of borrowing things he shouldn't have.
And since we're projecting back to Florida, what about somebody like Marco Rubio?
Well, I think Rubio, until he did the immigration bill, was at the first tier of possible candidates. But the Republican electorate is so conservative that I think since he put his name on immigration reform, particularly bipartisan reform in the beginning, it's hurt his standing.
Is there anybody else that you see out there that potentially could make a...
Scott Walker. I think governors are in
Walker?
better shape than senators. He's certainly one, but I think it's really too early to say.
And the galvanizing force right now, at least the better day for the Republicans, really comes at the downfall of some of the administration's missteps.
I think at this point the Republicans' argument is all negative, which is in the short term good and it'll probably help them in 2014. But going forward to 2016, there needs to be an argument about economic growth, inclusion, and a better society. Hope for America, something that I don't think the Republicans have offered the country for a very long time.
And let's turn the last attention to the last issue,
Sure.
is governor's race in Florida. Since
Yeah.
it's a bellwether state,
Sure.
there's a lot of our viewers interested. It seems to be shaping up an incumbent governor, Rick Scott, versus a now Democrat challenger, Charlie Crist.
Well, that really is the point. Now Democrat. Charlie Crist's been a Republican, he's been a Democrat, and he's been an independent. And he remains very popular. And at this point, he's in front. But there are a lot of ifs. First, off-year elections tend to work to the advantage of the Republicans. Rick Scott's going to spend $100 million or more. He's shown himself to be ideologically flexible, willing to embrace Medicaid expansion when you wouldn't think a conservative Republican would do that. And Charlie Crist has a lot of negatives. So while I would say, as we sit here today, Charlie Crist is the favorite, I don't count Rick Scott out. I think it's going to be a very close race.
Well, with Doug, I appreciate the time.
Thank you, Ed.
And I very much appreciate it. Thank you.
Thank you.